This chapter is an absolute roller coaster, rocketing from the leader's brilliant, almost casual invention of Hanyu Pinyin to solve language barriers, straight into the meticulously planned, overwhelming invasion of Bamboo Island. The scale of the Han fleet is breathtaking, and the way Shuya and Elder Jin have utterly hoodwinked Chieftain Xin with technological breadcrumbs while his doom approaches is just delicious. My jaw dropped at the brutal efficiency of the landing. Those divine arm crossbows are no joke, and the Huban guard securing the beachhead was pure, relentless power. But then, the shift to Xue Qingyao's hearts and minds strategy, offering rice cultivation to the stunned villagers. That's the real genius. This isn't just conquest. It's a total reshaping of a society, from language to agriculture, backed by unyielding military might. How will the utterly outmaneuvered Xin tribe even begin to comprehend, let alone resist this multi-pronged takeover? A large group of villagers surged out of the bamboo buildings with a great clamor, gathering in a dense throng behind the tribal elder and his son. Craning their necks, they stared at your Han tribe soldiers, their chattering and murmurs like the bubbling of boiling water. Honored envoy, the tribal elder edged forward, his eyes holding an earnest plea. If the Han tribe can truly teach us to plant rice, we don't want any compensation. We're even willing to pay for the rice seeds, as long as what you're saying is true. As soon as he finished speaking, the eyes of the dark mass of people behind him turned in unison towards the group leader, Xue Qingyao. Absolutely! Xue Qingyao pounded his chest resoundingly. When we of the Han tribe give our word, it's as good as done. If we say we're giving you rice seeds for free, we absolutely won't let you pay a single copper. However, he changed his tune like a shrewd businessman. Speaking of money, our army has just arrived, and we're desperately short of food, drink, fodder, and meat. If any of you folks want to earn a bit of spending money, feel free to send firewood, fodder, cattle, and sheep to our camp. Don't worry, we'll pay market price and absolutely won to let our fellow villagers get the short end of the stick. Also, Xue Qingyao cleared his throat, his voice rising a few notches. After this battle is over, we, the Han tribe, aren't leaving. The Han tribe script you hold can be exchanged for goods with us at any market, any time, and you can use it for your own trade. From now on, all our kinsfolk on Bamboo Island can buy whatever you want. Whatever our Han tribe people can buy, you'll be able to buy too. The moment these words were spoken, the crowd below practically exploded. The Han tribe envoys had sold things before, but the variety was as scarce as oases in a desert, and many prized items were simply not available to them. Even if they wanted to buy, they couldn't find a way. Who didn't know the Han tribe was rolling in wealth and had all sorts of rare and wonderful things? But they could only watch with longing. How could their hearts not feel stifled? Now, to their surprise, the Han tribe was actually going to grant full trading rights. At once, everyone's little hopes and schemes began to pop up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. If I may ask the envoy, the tribal elder's son, impatient as a monkey, was the first to speak up. Can we buy carts and boats? Of course you can. Xue Qingyao's reply was crisp and decisive. As long as you have the money, we'll sell. You'll get the same treatment as our own Han tribe people. Then if you drive away that bastard Commander Xin, will you still sell us cattle and horses afterward? Without livestock, we can't even till the land. Another young man, his voice booming, piped up from the crowd. Ha ha ha, Xue Qingyao laughed. How could we be the same as Commander Xin? When he sells you cattle and horses, he has to procure them from the grassland people. Our Han tribe has 3 large commanderies of our own on the grasslands, with pastures so vast you can't see the end of them. The cattle and horses we raise ourselves are enough for several 100,000 head to graze on. Our supply is open, and we deal fairly with young and old alike. Besides, even if you're tight on funds and can't afford cattle or horses, you can rent them from the authorities. You won't miss the farming season. Food and clothing, tilling the land and harvesting grain. These were the common folks' top priorities. Hearing the grand promises, oh no, the blueprint, laid out by the Han tribe. The villagers were so excited they almost took off flying on the spot. Such good fortune. Back in Commander Xin's time, they wouldn't have dared to dream of such a complete package. The common folk murmured and discussed for a long time, bombarding Xue Qingyao with questions about the minutiae of policies and trade. Xue Qingyao answered fluently, adeptly handling every query. After this thorough discussion, the Han tribe's favorability in the hearts of the locals shot up. Their initial apprehension vanished like smoke and clouds, replaced by an eagerness for the Han tribe to quickly deal with Commander Xin so they too could live like contented immortals. The discussions in the crowd never stopped. So, it turns out Commander Xin colluded with the grassland people, stabbed the Han tribe in the back first, and even killed so many of their people. No wonder the Han tribe sent troops to cut him down to size. Pfft, you believe whatever the Han tribe says. What if they're the ones looking for trouble? A contrarian retorted, unconvinced. What the hell do you know? Are your eyes just for show? Can't you see the facts right in front of you? Someone nearby immediately berated him. Let me ask you, when Commander Xin had the Elder collect grain this time, why did he tell our village to send it directly to the North Mountain military camp? Didn't you see who was in that camp? Several thousand grassland people. With 2 braided pigtails on either side of their heads, they don't even look like us. Are you blind? If this isn't ironclad proof of Commander Xin's collusion with the grassland people, what is? If there was no collusion, why would the grassland people help him fight? This barrage of questions left the contrarian speechless. How would he know so many inside details? Besides, think about it, when did they bring the grassland people to set up camp at North Mountain? At least 2 or 3 months ago, right? The Han tribe's main army wasn't even a shadow on the horizon back then. What do you think Commander Xin and his lot were scheming, bringing a bunch of grassland people there so early? The person who had just rebutted pressed his advantage, not waiting for an answer before launching into his own deduction. It's because they have a guilty conscience. They struck the Han tribe first, feared retaliation, so they set traps in advance. Otherwise, how could they have so coincidentally sent men to fight a battle right after the Han tribe landed? When that man finished his speech, the people around looked at him as if he were Zhuge Liang himself, freshly unearthed and alive. He too got carried away, his metaphorical tail almost curling up to the sky, as if he alone grasped the truth of the universe. However, such talk could only fool the honest and simple villagers. The tribal elder, who was as cunning as an old fox, wasn't so easily swayed. The Han tribe claimed Commander Xin had struck first, and they were acting in legitimate self-defense and, incidentally, seeking revenge. The tribal elder offered no comment on this. He didn't possess supernatural insight. Who was right and who was wrong, only the ghosts knew. But whether the Han tribe was right or wrong, what damned business was it of theirs? The tribal elder recognized only one thing. The Han tribe's policies were good for them. The Han tribe's script was useful. The Han tribe had good seeds and good technology, and the Han tribe produced many goods that could let them live better lives. Knowing this was enough. Therefore, even if the Han tribe was spinning tales, the tribal elder decided to listen to those tales as if they were gospel. Han tribe rule was better than Xin tribe rule. Even a fool knew how to choose. Thus, hearing his kinsman vehemently curse Commander Xin for colluding with the grassland people, he said nothing. He let them curse, the louder the better, as it would help nail down Commander Xin's crimes. That being said, the tribal elder had no intention of rolling up his sleeves to help the Han tribe. When 2 elephants fought, if little ants like them got involved, they'd be crushed if not killed outright. If the Han tribe won, it would be good. They might get some credit for backing the winner. But if the Han tribe lost, would Commander Xin spare them? The old fox understood perfectly well. Hedge his bets, help neither. In any case, he couldn't afford to offend either of these powerful entities. If the Han tribe wanted to be the top dog on Bamboo Island, fine. Let them fight for it with their own abilities. It would also be an eye-opener for these natives, letting them see what the Han tribe was truly made of. The old man's eyes darted, a plan forming in his mind. He immediately cupped his hands in a salute to Xue Qingyao. mimicking the Han tribe's etiquette, even bending his waist low. "Envoy, please don't blame us. Our village is small and has few people. We really can't offer much help. If the Han army needs firewood, fodder, or meat, just send men to our doors to collect it. We'll sell whatever we can. But to ask us to deliver it to the military camp ourselves, that we absolutely wouldn't dare. If Commander Xin's people found out, our small village would likely suffer disaster. So we'll have to trouble you to make the trip yourselves." Xue Qingyao rolled his eyes inwardly. "Well, I'll be another old fox." Outwardly, however, his face was all smiles, as warm as a spring breeze. "Nonsense, elder. We are the ones imposing. For everyone to be willing to spare firewood, fodder, and meat for the Han army is already a tremendous help. How could we dare ask the villagers to take such risks? Rest assured, whatever we need, we'll send someone to give you a heads up first. We'll come to collect it only after we've agreed, and we absolutely won't cause you any trouble." Saying this, he also cupped his hands in a return salute. "The envoy is truly benevolent and righteous. I, this old man, wish the Han army an early victory and success in avenging your wrongs and wiping away all hatred." "Absolutely. That day will come very soon." Xue Qingyao smiled with utter confidence. The conversation went rather well. Xue Qingyao bought 3 large carts of corn stalks for firewood from the village and led away a dozen or so mountain goats, then cheerfully headed for the next village. He made a round of several surrounding villages, and the situation was largely the same in each. Most of the local common folk believed the Han tribe's narrative and the stipulations in their proclamation to reassure the public. This was thanks to the good foundation of popular support established by the previous envoys, coupled with the fact that Commander Xin bringing a band of grassland people to build a military camp here was as obvious as lice on a bald man's head. They couldn't deny it even if they wanted to. Finally, the Han army's newly announced policies were an irresistible temptation for the common folk. Therefore, they were not only unresistant to the Han army's arrival, but actually felt a bit of schadenfreude, eagerly wishing to see the Han and Xin tribes tear each other apart like dogs. Xue Qingyao successfully secured enough meat, fodder, and firewood, and led his contingent and a train of carts back. On the way, he made a point of admonishing several newly appointed Sima, military commanders, of the garrisons who were with him. "You are all newly promoted Sima, but you are also veterans of our Han tribe. You must be clear about what military discipline entails, what you should do and what you shouldn't. Don't make me say it a second time. You've all watched today's proceedings from start to finish. Learn from how we interact with the local common folk. Let me just say one more thing. When the main force moves out, the Sima staying behind must keep things in order here. Pacify the populace and keep those rascals under your command in line. If anyone dares to act recklessly, whether officer or common soldier, they will be dealt with strictly and severely, with absolutely no leniency. I do not wish for the misdeeds of a few individuals to ruin our Han army's reputation, causing public resentment to boil over and rebellions to flare up everywhere. The chieftain especially does not want to see such a scene. If that truly happens, then you can all just wash your necks and wait." Hearing this, the Chend newly promoted Sima quickly cupped their hands and bowed. "Sima Xue, rest assured. We will respectfully follow your teachings and will definitely not fail the trust of you and the chieftain." Good that you understand." Xue Qingyao nodded with satisfaction. "This battle is to expand the borders and open up new territories for our great Han. If you do well, your contributions will not be forgotten. You are all political commissars of your respective units. Achieve more military merits, and a bright future awaits you. I hope you will all work together with one heart, for the tribe and for yourselves. Fight this battle beautifully, govern this territory stably, and pave the way for the chieftain's next move. Yes, we shall certainly not disappoint the high hopes of the chieftain and Sima." The Sima pledged their loyalty once more. Xue Qingyao chuckled. He had been the Sima of the Tiger Brigade for over half a year, and his previous experience managing construction projects had also trained him well. He had mastered the slap-then-sweet-date, carrot-and-stick approach to perfection. It was tried and tested, never failing. By the time their group sauntered back to the main camp, all troops and supplies had finished disembarking. The army camped on the spot and began to set up pots to cook. That fellow Xue Tu, blood butcher, at the first opportunity, had scattered all his scouts like scattering beans. Following the intelligence provided beforehand by the Jinwu Guard and the envoys, they were to focus on reconnoitering just how tough the turtle shells, the defenses of Commander Xin's two frontline corps were, and how many vicious traps they had laid in the mountain forests. It wasn't until dusk, as the sky was darkening, that the dispatched scouts began to return in batches, delivering all sorts of gathered intelligence to the command post. The staff officers of several garrisons were so busy, they were run off their feet compiling the intelligence, scribbling and drawing on maps and the sand table to help the commanders analyze the friendly and enemy situation and plan their deployments. Reporting, Marshal. The enemy's total strength is about 4,000. They skirmished with us this morning and lost over 400, leaving about 3,600. They are all holed up like turtles in their camp on the North Mountain Peak along the coast. They seem to have ample fresh water and provisions. They have a few dispatch riders, but no main cavalry force. The rest are bamboo-armored iron soldiers, but their quality can't compare to our men. Reporting, Marshal. We pried some information from captured prisoners. Someone said they secretly prepared 5 hidden paths leading from the strait, cliffs, forests, and riverbeds, all sorts of treacherous spots, that could allow them to sneak undetected to our envoy's encampment and landing site. They plan to attack our logistical supplies and fleet once our main army departs. Reporting, Marshal. We've had the surrendered prisoners show us all the traps they buried in the mountains. The reconnaissance units have cleared them. The main army can launch a general offensive at any time. One after another, scouts delivered intelligence to the central command tent. Xue Tu stared at the sand table, his fingers prodding and pointing, as he rapidly calculated the enemy's deployment and his own army's attack routes, pondering how to maximize the battle's outcome. Wipe them all out? No, that wasn't Xue Tu's style. He understood you, the chieftain, too well. Live and kicking prisoners were the best resource. Conscripting men, oh no, accepting surrenders and recruiting defectors. That was the supreme way. Of course, the prerequisite was that their own side couldn't suffer too many casualties. Xue Tu stared at the sand table, his eyes growing brighter. Suddenly he slapped his thigh. A brilliantly unorthodox plan to lure and trap the enemy took shape in his mind. Men, Xue Tu shouted at the top of his lungs. Get me the commanders of the Flying Bear Guard, Whistling Arrow Guard, Sea Wolf Guard, and Leopard Strategy Guard, Valiant Cavalry Guard. Let your horses rest and recover their stamina. You have no mission for now. Other garrisons, stand by for my arrangements. Yes, sir, an orderly responded, darting out like a rabbit to summon the commanders. Several garrisons were camped close together. At Xue Tu's order, it wasn't long before the summoned commanders all rushed into his tent with a clamor. Xue Tu led them to stand before the sand table, which had just been marked with the enemy's situation. He cleared his throat and began his pre-battle pep talk. Gentlemen, our first objective after landing is to wipe out those bastards entrenched in Cliff Mountain Commandery on the north coast in one fell swoop. You've all seen the intelligence, right? These fellows' main force consists of the core strength of Commander Xin's major clans, plus the remnants of Modu of the Grasslands' defeated army. To put it bluntly, as long as we destroy this force, it's over for the enemy. Our goal is complete annihilation. Of course. Xue Tu's tone shifted, a meaningful smile playing on his lips. This complete annihilation doesn't necessarily mean chopping them into meat paste. Whether they're killed or they obediently surrender, as long as not a single one slips away, it counts as complete annihilation. However, you also know what the chieftain, that old fellow, cherishes most, right? Prisoners, a labor force that can work. After all, when we take over Bamboo Island, we'll need to carry out construction everywhere. And construction requires manpower. So, when the fighting starts, try to capture them alive if you can. Don't just wipe them all out in one go. The commanders all nodded like chicks pecking rice. All right then. Xue Tu's opening remarks had set the keynote for the operation. Complete annihilation, but with capturing prisoners as the priority. This was just great. The difficulty of the operation had just increased exponentially. Any fool knew it was much easier to kill someone with one slash than to truss them up securely. This way, casualties on their own side would definitely skyrocket. The commander's brows furrowed into knots in unison. Xue Tu looked at their long, worried faces and chuckled, waving his hand. Although capturing them alive is the priority, it's definitely not as difficult as you all think. Don't forget, what kind of war are we fighting? A rich man's war. This time I plan to deploy 6 garrisons, a full 14,500 army brothers, plus those water devils from the Fubo Guard Navy, providing support from the side, to deal with a mere 3,600 or so enemies. With such overwhelming superiority in numbers, what the hell is there to be afraid of? As for how to capture prisoners, I already have a plan. Xue Tu paused deliberately here, picking up a slender pointing stick and tapping a mountaintop on the sand table. Gentlemen, do you remember the method for an encircling hunt? Back when our tribes used to hunt big game or herds of beasts, how did we do it? Several groups would divide the labor. One part responsible for driving them out with a lot of noise and commotion. Another part digging pits and setting traps in advance, herding the prey into our encirclement. Finally, hey presto, catch them all in one net. None of you have forgotten this method, I trust. Hearing this, the commander's eyes lit up, and they nodded one after another. Every single one of them present was an elite who had struggled and toughened themselves up in various small tribes. Who among them hadn't carried a hunting spear or chased wild boars? Even if they hadn't personally participated in an encircling hunt, after joining the Han tribe, they had taken part in 1 or 2 collective hunts, or at the very least, heard old soldiers boast about it. They knew the drill inside out. So the Marshal means. The Seawolf Guard commander was the first to react, rushing to ask to use our numerical superiority to first cast a wide net, then have the rest of our men attack the enemy press rear, driving them into our pre-arranged pocket. But the intelligence says the enemy has built a pile of strong fortifications on the mountaintop and hoarded a lot of provisions. It looks like they intend to defend to the death and wear us down. Would they be foolish enough to abandon their camp and run out to their deaths? Of course, they won't come out that easily. Xue Tu nodded, acknowledging the commander had some sense, but then he chuckled. But we're no pushovers either. You call those defensive works? No high walls or large compounds, no reinforcements or supplies. They think they can stop our iron advance with just that ring of flimsy wooden fences? It's not that I look down on them. Even if we don't attack, just by surrounding them we could starve them to death. But that would be too slow. We don't have that kind of leisure time. Their pathetic wooden palisade is neither fireproof nor can it withstand our cannonballs. What do they have to fight our Han army with? A few rounds of artillery barrage and I guarantee they'll run faster than rabbits. The Marshal is right. Exactly. Never mind that we have cannons. Even without them, we could smoke them out with a fire. Choosing to camp in the mountain forest was a blunder in itself. They only thought about hiding covertly, but forgot that such a flimsy place is not defensible at all. The commanders nodded repeatedly, their previous reservations completely vanishing. Looking at it this way, the material conditions for the encircling hunt plan were definitely in place. Next was to see how to execute it. Everyone, look here. Xue Tu's pointing stick indicated a river valley on the sand table. This place, 30 li west of the enemy's defensive line, has an inconspicuous little gully with a stream. There are mountains on both sides, and one entrance faces the enemy's position to the east. We'll set up our final point to close the net right here. 3,000 brothers from the Flying Bear Guard will lie in ambush here, waiting to pick up the stragglers. The other garrisons follow my Tiger Brigade, and let's go herd some ducks. 30 li is not a short distance. Our soldiers, wearing heavy armor and chasing after them like rabbits, will find it an arduous and thankless task. Therefore, we must make full use of our numerical superiority. Divide this 30-li stretch into several segments and conduct a relay race, taking turns to drive these unlucky bastards. The specific arrangements are as follows. Leopard Strategy Guard. You are responsible for completely blocking the enemy's eastern escape route. Also, send men to cut off those small paths leading to our envoy S encampment and the fleet S anchorage. You don't need to participate in herding the ducks. Just guard Cliff Mountain Commandery and protect the envoy. Fubo Guard. You are responsible for the northern direction, towards the strait. On one hand, provide fire support. On the other, prevent the enemy from making a desperate move like slipping away by sea or jumping into the sea to feed the fish. My Tiger Brigade will be solely responsible for blockading the southeastern direction and will handle the first 10-li segment of the driving mission. The remaining Sea Wolf Guard and Whistling Arrow Guard, you two split the latter 20-li of the pursuit. Is everyone clear? If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask now. After assigning the tasks, Xue Tu's gaze swept over the commanders beside him, checking for any dissenting opinions or flaws in his plan.
The Sea Wolf Guard commander immediately raised his hand. I have another question. The intelligence says the enemy has few horses, so they don't have cavalry. In that case, isn't a 30-li driving distance a bit too long? It'd be hard to cover 30 li on foot, especially while chasing people, right? I'm afraid that before we can even herd them into the ambush circle, we'll have finished them all off halfway there. As he said this, the other commanders chuckled, each one bursting with confidence, feeling this battle was practically a giveaway. Only the Flying Bear Guard commander's face fell upon hearing this, looking very displeased. Hey, that won't do. The Flying Bear Guard commander cried out. If you finish them off before they even get here, wouldn't we, who have painstakingly set up an ambush at the finish line, be waiting half a day for nothing, not even getting a sniff of the action? My lads definitely wouldn't stand for that. Xue Tu also nodded to himself. Indeed, soldiers all wanted to snag military merits and climb the ranks. If you didn't give them battles to fight, where would their medals come from? Xue Tu boldly and openly set up his formation before Commander Xin's frontline camp, watching the east eagerly, just waiting for dawn. He had confirmed several times with Xue Dayao on the sea using a walkie-talkie, oh no, some kind of primitive communication device ensuring both sides were in position and all their gear was ready. Only then did he aim the dark muzzles of the cannons at Commander Xin's shabby wooden stockade. Marshal, the Tiger Brigade's artillery captain, huffing and puffing, had dragged 20 large cannons to the front line and now ran over bustlingly to request instructions. Which size explosive charge should we use? What targets should we hit? How many shots to fire? The main purpose of this bombardment is to demolish their flimsy stockade walls, not to kill people. Xue Tu stroked his chin, pondered for a moment, then decisively ordered, just use chain shot. Blast down the stockade walls in the southeast, our two main directions of attack. As for how high to aim, how much gunpowder to pack, and how many volleys, you figure it out. Get your reconnaissance done and wait for my signal. Yes, sir. The artillery captain cupped his hands and quickly departed. After some close-in reconnaissance by the frontline scouts, precise firing parameters were soon provided for each cannon. Considering they were firing uphill and using dead-heavy chain shot, the artillerymen didn't even think twice and directly used the largest powder charges. Otherwise, the chain shot, which didn't fly far to begin with, would probably fall short and hit their own feet right out of the muzzle if they used less powder. After a period of frantic adjustments, Each cannon was aimed at its respective target, just waiting for Xue Tu's order to give Commander Xin's tribe a taste of demolition. On the sea, Xue Tu faced a similar predicament. His ship was in the strait, its gun emplacements even lower than those of his comrades on land. Trying to hit the enemy on the mountaintop to the side with his direct-fire cannons was practically a fool's errand. Xue Tu raised his spyglass, peering at the dark, looming cliffs to the south. His heart felt like a cat was scratching at it. He was incredibly anxious. He was still waiting for the ballistics calculations from the gun decks below. First gun deck reporting. Target too close, can't hit it. Best firing position requires moving back 500 meters and using double powder with round solid shot to even graze their ugly faces. Just as Xue Tu was about to crush the spyglass in his impatience, a voice, like a lifeline, finally came through one of the brass speaking tubes on the command platform before him. Xue Tu understood immediately. As the commander of the Fubo Guard, this maritime urban management brigade, whose main offensive power came from cannons, he had spent no small amount of time figuring out creative ways to use his artillery. In this situation, firing upwards, even the cannons on the first deck below couldn't reach. The two decks further down were out of the question. They probably couldn't even see a shadow of the enemy. Thus, Xue Tu made a swift decision, roaring at the ship's captain. "Command the gunship, south, traverse 500 meters. Immediately, now, speed." "Aye," the captain acknowledged, hurrying off to coordinate the various departments, moving as if wound up. "Turn, hard to starboard, hoist sails, come about." The captain rattled off a series of commands like machine gun fire, then, fearing this landlubber Xue Tu wouldn't understand, quickly added, "Commander Xue, a lateral shift is tricky. Our sailing ship doesn't have a reverse gear. Let's just turn her around completely, make a half circle. We'll use the starboard cannons to hit them." After listening, Xue Tu nodded in profound agreement. This was simple enough. He'd been sailing with the fleet for over half a year and was no longer the greenhorn who got seasick at the sight of water. He understood at once. So, without further questions, he immediately ordered the gun decks below, all gunners. Transfer to starboard gun positions. Prepare to recalculate ballistics at any moment. Aye. The sailors on deck deftly hoisted the sails, and the helmsman held the rudder firm. The Fubo, with a displacement of over 4,000 tons, carved a beautiful semicircle on the water. Its turning radius neither too large nor too small, just about 500 meters. With this maneuver, the ship's position was parallel to its previous one, its broadside still facing Commander Xin's camp, only its bow now pointed east instead of west. And the firing cannon switched from port to starboard. Once the ship dropped anchor and steadied, the gunners below began their tense ballistics calculations again. Actually, calculating this was fairly simple. The Han tribe's cannons had a limited range, basically equivalent to aiming by eye with a ruler. Therefore, any target visible to the naked eye along the barrel was almost certain to be hit. The gunners' observation results were quickly relayed upwards. Report: first deck, double powder, 7-degree elevation, can open fire. Report: second deck, maximum powder, 10-degree elevation, guaranteed hit. Report: third deck can't reach. Can only see the edge of the cliff. Messages came from the 3 gun decks one after another, but Xue Tu's brow furrowed into a knot. The lowest deck couldn't reach, which meant a direct loss of firepower from 20 cannons. However, Having finally gotten a chance to fight, he didn't want to miss this opportunity to shine. Thus, Xue Tu was heard to say through gritted teeth, "Hitting the cliff edge is fine too. Even if we don't hit anyone, dislodging a few rocks to fall down and scare them will do. Aye. Third deck understands. Maximum powder, maximum elevation. Prepare to fire." A loud reply soon came from the brass speaking tube on the command platform, and battle preparations officially began. Over at Commander Xin's position, Qiyun gradually sensed something was amiss. He listened to the jumbled reports from several scouts beside him, but his gaze kept darting towards the foot of the mountain. The Han army's position, originally bustling with noise, had suddenly become as quiet as if they'd run into a ghost wall. Dawn was about to break. The enemy couldn't possibly be collectively taking a nap at this critical juncture, could they? That was too ridiculous. But if the enemy wasn't sleeping, then were they preparing to make a move? He listened to a young hothead from his clan animatedly describing the movements of the colossal ship on the sea, but his eyes were fixed on the eastern horizon, where the sky might at any moment show the first pale light of dawn. Just then, a faint gleam, like a sharp sword, suddenly shot out from the eastern sky, instantly tearing apart the heavy darkness that enveloped the mountain forest before dawn. But before he could react, 20 or 30 dazzling fireballs suddenly erupted from the foot of the mountain outside the camp, followed by large plumes of grayish-white smoke billowing into the air. Just as everyone was dazed by the sudden glare, a continuous series of thunderous roars assaulted their ears. The sound, like the wrath of heaven, was deafening, as if exploding right beside them, a terrifying scene they never wanted to experience again in their lives. However, before everyone could recover from the terror of the thunder, in the next moment, 20 or 30 unidentified objects, trailing long fiery tails and flickering in and out of sight, came whistling towards them like life-reaping demons. Most people instinctively raised their hands to shield themselves, shut their eyes tightly, and turned their heads aside. This was humanity's most primal self-preservation instinct when under attack. Unfortunately, against whistling cannonballs, such an act of futile resistance was utterly useless. After all, the vast majority of people present were witnessing this unreasonable form of attack artillery for the very first time in their lives. Heaven's punishment. Get down. It's the Han tribe's heaven's punishment. Everyone get down. While Qiyun and most of Commander Xin's clansmen stood frozen in place, bewildered, many of the grassland soldiers, who had witnessed similar scenes before, were the first to react. They scrambled and crawled to the ground, simultaneously screaming at the top of their lungs at those around them, because this was the only effective method they knew to avoid being directly hit by cannonballs. As for counterattacking, don't be ridiculous. That was an impossible task. Pushed to the ground by someone, Qiyun finally came to his senses. Just as he was about to order his soldiers to quickly get down and take cover, he heard another earth-shattering roar in his ears, along with the piercing crack-crack sound of wooden stakes being forcibly snapped. Countless people instinctively looked up in terror. They saw a dozen or so rapidly spinning chainshot, as if they had eyes, slam head-on into the stockade wall they had painstakingly erected. In the next instant, the originally sturdy wooden stockade wall, under the crushing impact of the chain shot, shattered like paper, instantly reduced to a pile of wood chips and broken stakes. Sharp bamboo splinters and wooden shards flew in all directions like a celestial maiden scattering flowers, instantly turning nearby unfortunate souls into porcupines. The cannon fire, accompanied by the first ray of dawn, split the long night like a giant axe. The chain shot, trailing a deathly whistle, slammed viciously into the stockade walls. In the blink of an eye, the sturdy encampment that Qiyun had relied on to resist the Tie Han army became as brittle as a biscuit before these 20 rapidly spinning iron monstrosities shattering into a mess on the ground. Wood chips and bamboo splinters flew everywhere. It was unknown whether those near the stockade wall were dead or alive. The power of the chain shot was indeed terrifying, but thankfully the stockade wall had absorbed some of the impact. With the two forces partially canceling each other out, the chain shot, after breaking through the wall, no longer had much momentum left to reap heads. Many chain shot, after collapsing the wall, had their connecting iron chains tangled around the wooden stakes like an old woman's knitting yarn. They couldn't even manage a second bounce and, after spinning on the ground a few times, completely came to rest. But even this was enough to scare the wits out of Commander Xin's clan army, who were witnessing the power of artillery for the first time. The grassland soldiers, by comparison, were slightly calmer, but only slightly. Unlike these country bumpkins from Commander Xin's tribe, they had personally experienced the feeling of being ground into the dirt by Han tribe cannonballs. Recalling it now still made their hearts ache. If the Han tribe hadn't suddenly pulled out such a god-defying super-weapon back then, they wouldn't have lost so miserably, almost losing their underpants in the process. The scene instantly descended into chaos. Some were so scared they lay on the ground crying for their parents, wailing like pigs being slaughtered. Others ran around frantically like headless flies. Still, others, noticing no cannon fire from the north and west, had a sudden brainwave and bolted in those two directions. Qiyun was completely dumbfounded, watching his soldiers scatter like ants from a disturbed nest, utterly helpless, scratching his head in agitation. But just then, as the cannon fire from the foot of the mountain subsided, a series of rumble roars immediately followed from the sea behind him. Qiyun, lying prone in the camp, couldn't see anything, but then he saw countless small black dots flying densely from the northern sky. As these small black dots flew through the air, they continuously emitted shriek, whistling sounds that made one's scalp tingle. The next moment, those things rained down like hailstones, smashing down on them. Shriek boom, a cannonball, tracing a beautiful parabola, landed squarely and heavily on a large boulder within the camp. With a boom, the stone shattered on the spot, and countless stone fragments flew outwards like hidden weapons, giving many of the clan soldiers and grassland soldiers who had just run to the north another solid beating. However, because they were firing solid shot, and it was a plunging trajectory, the damage caused was quite limited. Cannonballs landing on boulders were one thing. They could shatter some fragments and bounce to injure a few more people. But those that plunged headfirst into the soil, unless they got incredibly lucky and hit a few unfortunate souls before landing, were like clay oxen entering the sea. They didn't even make a splash and had virtually no killing power. But the continuous cannon roars and the flying debris and cannonballs still exerted immense psychological pressure on Commander Xin's forces. This was the first time they had experienced such a frustrating battle, being battered silly without even knowing where the enemy was. Some ran around the camp aimlessly and, by sheer bad luck, ran straight into a flying cannonball, getting half their bodies smashed on the spot, a truly miserable death. Others had learned their lesson and stayed prone on the ground, holding large wooden shields over themselves. Those who were lucky generally escaped unscathed. Qiyun was completely out of ideas, his mind a blank. But those grassland soldiers had already accumulated considerable experience in being bombarded. They soon discovered that this bombardment seemed different from the one at Keyuan City. During the Keyuan City battle, the terrain was flat as a pancake, and the cannonball's lethality was terrifying. One shot could plow a bloody furrow, and after landing, the cannonballs could even skip repeatedly, continuously inflicting casualties. But this time was clearly different. The enemies to the east and south were all firing chain shot, apparently just wanting to tear down their walls. The cannonballs fired from the large ship to the north were shot too far and too high. By the time they reached them, they were basically falling vertically. Only when they hit stones could they cause some damage. If you got killed by one while lying on soft ground, it could only be said that your luck was bad, and King Yama had called your name in advance. Therefore, the leaders of the grassland soldiers quickly exchanged orders through eye contact and hand gestures. Everyone down! All of you, get down! Don't run around blindly. Stay away from those rocks. Hearing their comrades' calls, the grassland soldiers quickly followed instructions, finding soft patches of earth or spots under large trees to lie prone. When Commander Xin's clan soldiers saw this, they all followed suit, lying down with them. The chaotic situation immediately improved considerably. Basically, everyone was lying on the ground like turtles with their heads pulled in.
Boom, 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 boom. 60 deafening cannon roars sounded continuously from the sea, one after another, so dense that it was impossible to count them. As the last shot of the first volley faded, the second wave of fire was already halfway through. The cannon fire was incessant, and cannonballs never stopped flying over the camp, though now they weren't causing much substantial damage to Commander Xin's forces. It was mainly for intimidation. Soon, a second round of bombardment came from their east and south, still firing wall-demolishing chain shot. Seeing this situation, a grassland soldier leader, holding a large shield, rolled and crawled over to Qiyun, nudged him, and asked in a low voice, "Clan leader Qi, the Han tribe isn't fighting to kill people with this tactic. They want to demolish all our camp's stockade walls. I reckon they're about to send men to charge. Once our walls are all down, won't their thousands of men pour in like a tide? What do we do now?" Qiyun cried out inwardly in bitterness. How should I know what to do? He had originally thought war was about both sides lining up. You shoot an arrow at me, I shoot an arrow at you. And when the arrows ran out, you send in the grunts for close combat. Who knew the Han tribe didn't play by the rules, hitting you with high-tech stuff right from the start? You fought the Han tribe before. What do you think we should do at this point? Qiyun was completely at a loss and simply kicked the ball to the grassland soldier leader beside him. This. The grassland soldier leader also stammered a bit. The Han tribe is powerful, and now we've lost the cover of our stockade walls. Our brothers are pinned down by artillery fire, and their morale is gone. If we fight head-on, we'll definitely lose. I think we should run first. Shake them off, then find another place to make camp, and hold them off. At the same time, quickly ask Commander Xin for reinforcements. With just us, we're no match for the Han tribe. We absolutely need more men. When Qiyun heard this fellow open his mouth and talk about running, he immediately glared at him. But he also knew in his heart that the man was speaking the truth. Clashing head-on with the Han tribe now was like lighting a lantern in a latrine-courting death. At that rate, even he himself would perish here. He was the second clan leader. He hadn't had enough of the good life yet. How could he be willing to meet King Yama now? But where can we run to now, Sai? Qiyun, suddenly let out a long sigh, his voice filled with helplessness. To the north are steep cliffs, and below is the sea. We definitely can't go there. Jump down to feed the fish? To the east and south are the Han army's main forces. We can't just walk into their mouths. Only the west looks like it has fewer people, and they don't have that terrifying heaven's punishment weapon over there. Let's concentrate our forces and break out to the west. If we get out, we can rendezvous with the Grand Commander and have him send more troops. With just our numbers, we're not even enough for the Han tribe to pick their teeth with. The grassland soldier leader suggested again. Sigh, all right then. Qiyun sighed again, forced to bow to harsh reality. Then tell everyone to get up. Break out to the west immediately, quickly. Otherwise, the Han tribe will charge up. Rumble. The cannons continued to roar relentlessly. The pitiful stockade walls of Commander Xin's encampment rapidly collapsed piece by piece under the artillery's devastation. Qiyun and his men knew clearly that it wouldn't be long before the Han tribe's wolf-like army would surge forward like an open floodgate. Therefore, there was no more hesitation. Qiyun made a decisive decision, shouting at the top of his lungs the order to break out to the west. The soldiers had long wanted to bolt. Many of them, for the first time in their lives, had watched their own kinsmen, even living people, die miserably before their very eyes. The psychological impact was even stronger than being hit over the head with a club. So when they heard the order to break out to the west, they were all as if injected with chicken blood, springing up from the ground with a swoosh and scrambling to surge towards the western side of the camp. However, just as these men reached the west, they ran headfirst into an iron plate, met by a head-on blow from the Tiger Brigade. The originally dark and unlit forest suddenly lit up with countless torches with a swish, swish, swish. The next moment, these burning torches rained down on their western stockade like falling rain, instantly illuminating the western side of the camp, as if it were daytime. Some soldiers, emboldened, charged forward, trying to slip out through the camp gate. However, just a few steps out of the gate, they were met by a volley of cold arrows. With a few fef sounds, those unlucky bastards were shot into porcupines, collapsing on the spot. At this distance of less than 100 meters, the thin layer of bamboo armor they wore offered no decent protection at all. It was no different from paper. However, Commander Xin's forces were, after all, desperately trying to break out from the west, and the Han tribe hadn't deployed many troops here. So, the Tiger Brigade only symbolically loosed a few sparse volleys of arrows, felling 20 or 30 unlucky souls, before beginning an orderly retreat according to plan. This created a false impression for Commander Xin's forces. Hey, this enemy contingent doesn't seem very tough. If we try hard, maybe we can turn the tables. At this moment, on Xue Tu's side, after 3 rounds of relentless chain-shot bombardment, the stockade walls in the southeast and south directions were mostly demolished. Coupled with scouts galloping in to report that the enemy had begun to break out to the west, Xue Tu decisively waved his hand, ordered a halt to the artillery fire, sounded the charge, and launched an all-out assault. Quick! Don't let them escape! Brothers, after them! Charge, brothers! The time to win glory and establish merit has come. Don't let a single enemy escape. Do, the clarion call of the charge horn resounded through the sky. The Tiger Brigade's sword and shield soldiers were the first to roar and charge, looking like wolf cubs starved for 3 days that had just spotted meat. Spearmen and halberdiers followed close behind, with archers and crossbowmen forming the last echelon. But, hilariously, shortly after deploying into attack formation, some of the archers, crossbowmen, and spearmen in the rear got excited and ran even faster than the sword and shield soldiers in front. The soldiers of the Leopard Strategy Guard were still somewhat nervous and hesitant, as many were new recruits. But they too rubbed their palms together, eagerly following. However, they hadn't run more than a few steps before Xue Tu called them to a halt. "Marshal, what is it?" The Leopard Strategy Guard commander asked, looking bewildered. "You don't need to charge so far forward," Xue Tu immediately arranged. "Stay behind to receive prisoners. Remember later, don't follow the charge down the mountain. After reaching the foot of the mountain, you will escort the prisoners back here and establish a new camp." "Why, Marshal?" Hearing this, the Leopard Strategy Guard commander was instantly displeased, sticking out his neck and saying, "Although our Leopard Strategy Guard has trained for a short time, we can still fight. Let us join the pursuit." "Is your Leopard Strategy Guard the same?" Xue Tu immediately lowered his voice, scolding him as if he were scolding a grandson. "These are soldiers recruited from the Tang tribe. To put it bluntly, they're mercenaries. Even if they charge up and achieve military merits like cutting melons and vegetables, the chieftain won't possibly grant them official positions or promotions. What's the use of them earning those merits? It's better to leave the opportunity to the brothers in other units. Besides, if anything untoward happens, we'll have to pay the Tang tribe a hefty sum in compensation. It's not worth it."
Don't forget the Leopard Strategy Guard's duty. Xue Tu's tone became even sterner. "Stay here obediently, guard Cliff Mountain Commandery, guard the envoy and logistical supplies and our fleet. If even the slightest mishap occurs, I'll hold you responsible." "Yes, I obey the Marshal's order." The Leopard Strategy Guard commander panted heavily a few times and finally responded dejectedly, but he was filled with regret, his guts practically turning green. He had initially thought being promoted to commander was a pie falling from the sky. He hadn't expected to be leading such a neglected unit, with the higher-ups not even giving them a chance to fight. Without fighting, how could he earn merits? How could he get promoted? If he had known this earlier, he would have been better off staying as a post commander in the Tiger Brigade. The Tiger Brigade, as the vanguard, had already engaged the tail end of Commander Xin's retreating forces. The enemy had no intention of fighting. The moment they saw the dark mass of Han soldiers pursuing them from behind, they immediately quickened their pace, running faster than rabbits. Everyone had heard that those Han army fellows were extremely cruel, and capture would undoubtedly mean decapitation. Thus, terrified out of their wits, they ran as if competing in the Olympic 100-meter dash, their speed 30% faster than their usual training pace, practically using every last ounce of their strength. However, the more anxious one is, the easier it is to make mistakes. Some, while running, were tripped and knocked down by their comrades beside them. Before they could scramble back to their feet, a huge shadow suddenly appeared overhead. The next moment, a massive shield came crashing down like Mount Tai. Thump, knocking the unlucky fellow unconscious. "Ha ha ha ha! I got one! I've earned merit! I'm going to get promoted!" The Tiger Brigade soldier, who had knocked the man out with a single shield bash, immediately danced with excitement, as if he had won a $5 million lottery. "Damn it, you lucky bastard! That son of a bitch fell on his own, and you just picked up a huge bargain." Another soldier passing by cursed, somewhat envious. He had been just 2 steps away. That prisoner would have been his. However, no sooner had he finished speaking than he received a solid slap on the back of his head. "Stop your damn whining. Isn't it because you're too slow? Otherwise, how come you didn't get him? Still looking? Hurry up and run. If our company captures fewer men than the others, I'll beat every single one of you." The one who slapped the soldier was their company commander. After a string of curses, he immediately led the others to continue charging forward. It wasn't that this company commander had such high moral principles. He was envious too. Soldiers earned merit whether they killed enemies or captured prisoners. And for these low-ranking officers, as insignificant as sesame seeds to climb the ranks, they not only needed personal military achievements, but also had to compete with other company commanders. Those whose total merit points ranked higher would be given priority when suitable positions became vacant. This wasn't something individual heroism could solve. It depended on the entire team's combat capability. But then again, a company commander who was skilled at leading troops would naturally have a squad with decent combat strength, and it was reasonable for the entire team to have more total military merit. Higher-ups would, of course, prioritize promoting such capable low-ranking officers. Swish! A crossbow bolt cut through the air, accurately hitting the calf of a soldier in Commander Xin's rearguard. The man was running at high speed when a sharp pain shot through his leg. He stumbled and fell to the ground on the spot. Seeing the Han army surging towards him like a tide from behind, this Xin tribe clansman immediately turned deathly pale, screaming in terror, "Ah, big brother! Save me! Quick, save me! I don't want to die!" Thump! He had just finished shouting when a shield whistled down from behind. Thump! Knocking the unlucky fellow unconscious on the spot. And the big brother this soldier had just called out to, hearing his brother's heart-wrenching plea for help, whipped his head around and saw the exact moment his brother was knocked out by a Han army shield. The shield and his brother's head were both covered in glaring blood. He thought his brother had been beaten to death by the Han army. His eyes instantly turned swish red. He raised the shield and iron sword in his hands, let out a beast-like roar, and charged back recklessly. "Ah, you killed my brother. I'll fight you to the death." This man, as if mad, charged fiercely towards the Han soldiers behind him. His iron sword was raised high, and the shield in his left hand was held tightly in front of him. From his posture, it seemed he intended to send the enemy before him flying. The next moment, with a loud thump, this Xin tribe sword and shield soldier fiercely collided with a Tiger Brigade sword and shield soldier. One, eyes red with fury because his brother had been killed, was possessed by a desperate fighting spirit. The other, eager for merit and his morale high, was also going all out. Both used all their strength, and in this collision, neither gained an advantage. Both took a step back. It was a draw. The next moment, the iron sword in the Xin tribe warrior's hand whistled through the air, swinging fiercely towards the head of the Tiger Brigade sword and shield soldier. The Tiger Brigade soldier was startled, and hastily raised his steel sword horizontally to block. Clang! A piercing sound of metal striking metal rang out. Immediately followed by a crisp crack, the iron sword in the Xin tribe warrior's hand actually snapped into two pieces. The half of the broken sword that flew off continued its momentum, grazing past the Tiger Brigade warrior's face with a swish, cutting a deep, long gash on his cheek. The flesh around the wound averted, and blood gushed out freely as if it cost nothing. "Ah, how dare you injure your grandpa! Die!" The Tiger Brigade warrior, in pain, let out an angry roar, swung the steel sword in his hand, and hacked fiercely at the enemy before him. The excruciating pain from the wound on his face had made him utterly ruthless. He hadn't even considered leaving the man alive. This strike was intended to take the enemy's life. The Xin tribe warrior, having broken his own sword with a strike and seeing the Han army's gleaming steel sword perfectly intact, felt a surge of panic. Seeing the Han tribe warrior swinging his sword at him, he quickly raised his shield to block the blow. With a thwack, the strike actually lopped off half his shield. Although the shield was broken, it had at least blocked the blow for him and left him a sliver of an opportunity to counterattack. This fellow, making a swift decision, brandished the remaining half of his broken sword and thrust it directly at the Han soldier before him. The Han army soldiers had all undergone unified, rigorous training and frequently engaged in practical combat drills. Their fighting skills were already quite mature, even forming conditioned reflexes. The injured Tiger Brigade sword and shield soldier, after swinging his sword, regardless of whether he hit or missed, instinctively executed a habitual continuous move. His left hand immediately brought up his shield, and turning sideways, he thrust forward sharply. And it was precisely this instinctive action that saved his life again. The enemy's fiercely thrusting longsword was blocked by his shield, and as luck would have it, under the violent impact, it actually injured the Xin tribe warrior's sword-wielding wrist. The enemy's wrist ached, and the half-sword in his hand clattered to the ground. As a result, he was viciously knocked to the ground by the Tiger Brigade soldier's fierce shield bash. Before he could get back up, with a swish, a steel halberd, gleaming with a sinister cold light, accurately pierced the ground beside his neck. The transverse blade extending from the halberd head pinned his neck firmly. If he dared to move even slightly, he would undoubtedly be decapitated. "Don't move!" The Han tribe halberdier in front of him, speaking in a strange Bamboo Island dialect, shouted sternly, glaring at him fiercely. The force on the steel halberd in his hand increased, and the sharp transverse blade had already pressed a shallow, bloody mark on his neck. The Xin tribe soldier, his neck locked by the blade, knew he had no way out. Resigned, he simply closed his eyes and lay there stiffly, waiting for death. 2 lines of desperate tears streamed from the corners of his eyes. He knew he couldn't avenge his brother now. He had even lost his own life. Damn you! How dare you injure me? See if I don't beat you to death! The Tiger Brigade sword and shield soldier, his face still bloody, angrily swung his shield, smashing it repeatedly onto the Xin tribe soldier, causing the halberdier beside him to frown. All right, brother. Stop hitting him. He won't be worth anything if he's dead. The halberdier, looking at his ferociously faced comrade, quickly advised from the side, You should hurry back and get your wound bandaged. I see blood all over your face and neck. Are you all right? Damn, I'm the one who knocked him down. You don't think the merit counts as yours this way, do you? Hearing this, the sword and shield soldier immediately glared fiercely at the halberdier beside him. The halberdier shrugged helplessly. He knew he was somewhat in the wrong. After all, when he had pinned the man down, this fellow had just been knocked to the ground. Moreover, this man had been injured subduing this enemy. He really didn't have the face to claim this merit. All right, this military merit is yours, brother. I wouldn't dare take it. The halberdier replied helplessly, You tie him up, I'll be going. With that, he pulled his weapon from the ground, turned, and left. The injured sword and shield soldier didn't want to pursue it further. He had a wound on his face and military merit in hand. He simply trussed the man up securely, sat down on the spot, and waited for friendly forces behind to take the prisoner, and also for the logistical medics to come and bandage his wound. Meanwhile, Qi Yun and the remaining forces of Commander Xin, who were desperately trying to break out in front, were also running for their lives. From time to time, they had to deal with pot shots and stray arrows from Han soldiers popping up from the flanks, while constantly guarding against the relentless pursuit of the Han army from behind. The column stretched longer and longer. By the time they finally reached the foot of the mountain, their forces behind had dwindled to just over 3,200 men. The other warriors had either unfortunately been killed or wounded in the earlier bombardment, or had been caught by the Han army's tenacious pursuit during the breakout and failed to escape. Having paid a heavy price of 300 to 400 men, Qi Yun finally led the main force out of the range of the Han army's arrows. But the Han army behind them still clung to them like maggots on a bone. They dared not relax in the slightest, and could only flee westward with all their might. Little did they know that they themselves were drawing ever closer to the meticulously laid ambush by the Han tribe. Xue Tu, riding his horse leisurely at the very end of the column, raised his spyglass and glanced in the direction of Commander Xin's fleeing forces. A confident smile couldn't help but play on his lips as he muttered to himself, these fools really took the bait that easily.